Hello everyone, welcome to Aardvark Swift. This is a section where we talk to game developers about their career, the background and the kind of things that they've been working on. With me today is Piers Duplock. He's a senior producer at Warp Digital, who specialise in code development, porting and production support, and of course are an indie studio. Hello Piers, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, happy to be here.
Happy to have you, mate. Happy to have you. Tell us a bit about being a senior producer at Warp and what a typical day involves, what your kind of responsibilities are, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no worries. It's a lot of helping people and making sure people are okay to get on with their work. Honestly, if anybody needs anything unblocked, if anybody needs anything cleared out of their way, that's what I'm here to do. Whether that's, something on the project, they need something from somebody else, for instance, can do that. Whether that's, a more businessy side problem, like a HR issue or something like that, absolutely there for that as well. But ultimately, I'm here to look after the scheduling for various projects. We have 3 projects currently on the go. So I make sure they're scheduled and they're resourced correctly, make sure it's got enough people, make sure we've got enough money and everything like that.
Sounds good. Sounds like you have to wear a lot of hats, lots of different responsibilities and stuff like that. So how long have you been at Warp then, and sort of what was your background to get to that point?
I've been at Warp now for I think 3.5 years, nearly 4 years. So my background was in QA originally. And I've come through Codemasters and Rebellion, spent some time out of the industry as well to come back in and join Warp.
If you don't mind me asking, what got you out of the industry? Was there anything that caught your eye, or was it just some time personally that you wanted to take out? Or
I can't quite remember, to be honest. It's a while ago now, but I remember the job being quite interesting, and so it caught my eye definitely. I'd also gone through a period of crunch as well inside the industry, which always makes you evaluate your options as well.
Yeah, of course. The only reason why I ask is I remember talking to someone that specifically said once you're in the industry, and no matter how hard you try to leave, you always come back. It's one that you've kind of almost sold your soul to. So I was curious as to see if there was something that sort of dragged you out of it. Speaking of that, how did you first become interested in the gaming industry, and what made you want to get into?
I kind of fell into it by accident, to be honest. I was just looking for a job around the financial crash in 2008. I just had like a shelf stacking job, in my hometown. And I heard on the radio as I was going to the job centre that Codemasters were hiring for 100 QA staff, and it actually made national news because at the time nobody was really hiring. So it made national news that that 100 QA jobs were opening at Codemasters. Like, wow, video games, cool. Yeah, I could probably do that. So I applied and was lucky enough to get in.
That's such a good stroke of luck to say how extensive your background has been just from looking for a job, not a particular direction. That's very cool. What sort of drew you into production from QA?
I felt like it was a very natural stepping stone at the time. QA and production do share a lot of similarities in that they view the whole project holistically. Obviously, QA has a view to on quality, which is important in production, but production has an eye on the schedule and getting the project done. So they share a lot of values, the two jobs. So it felt like a very natural stepping stone for me.
What were the qualities, first of all, that you've developed over your time in the industry, coming from, again, just stumbling into the role to, coming to where you are now, a senior producer?
Yeah, there's so many, too many for me to list, I think. Off the top of my head, eye for detail, as being part of a QA background, you've got to have such an eye for detail that you develop that really well. The softer side skills of managing people, managing a business and stuff like that is all super important. It's not talked about enough, I don't think, but it's incredibly important for production to have. And then you have the harder side skills of actual schedule management and and budgeting, and everything that comes along with that as well.
In terms of sort of educational background, was there anything that you did before getting into QA and then production that definitely fed into that?
I don't think so. I left school relatively young, and I wasn't particularly good at school either. Um, so I guess it's more of a hopeful tale of, you don't have to be great at school. Don't worry about it. You can still do all right.
Yeah, that's always good to hear. It's always good to hear those kind of tales. That being said then, what advice would you give to someone looking to get into a production role, or just a role generally in the video games industry from your varied experiences? Anything that you'd pass on?
Yeah, I think what I'd say is, if you're passionate about it, just go out and do it. Try something. The great thing about the industry that now is, you've got all these free engines like Unity and Unreal, and you've got all these tutorials out on YouTube and stuff like that you can kind of roll through on your own, and you can create stuff. So when we're looking for candidates, if we see somebody that's super passionate, it's like, hey, I've created all these personal projects, I'm really excited and passionate and want to learn, that instantly stands out to us.
I think for those listening, I'd very much recommend listening to the podcast that we've recently recorded with Warp Digital. You mentioned that at the culture, you're more about people that are passionate and are willing to fit in, willing to be team players and stuff. So it sounds like for you personally, as well as Warp, it's a crucial factor to have not only that passion but that drive, and that's something that you think should be carried forward. So I think that's really, really cool. Really interesting to hear about. Yeah, so from your background then, obviously you've had quite a varied one. I'd be really interested to know your perspective on getting into production. Obviously you came via QA, which shares quite a few similarities with production. I've talked to some other producers when doing these podcasts and stuff. Some have come directly through that path. Others have maybe had a specialisation in something else. So, for example, they've become an artist, got really up the ladders as an artist, and then was like, I want to try production. To what extent would you say it is beneficial to either build up as a producer or, really understand the craft in one element of game development?
Yeah, that's great. I would say it's absolutely beneficial to have a background in a game development technique, whether it be art or animation or what have you, because it gives you that grounding of how a game is made first. So I think that's super important. Obviously, it's not absolutely critical. I mean, project managers, I've seen project managers come in from other industries that have done just as well, because they know they know how to track budgeting, they know how to track schedules and stuff like that, and they've been just as successful. I've always been very happy that I've had a background in QA first, because I had that knowledge of, here's how a game is made, and then I learned the production skills on top of that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to go, because when you are sort of leading a project or part of the organisation of that, if you can understand from base value upwards all the elements and stuff that's needed, then you can lead from a place of understanding and not just authority, I suppose. But yeah, so when I did a bit of research into your background, obviously for the podcast and for this discussion now, and I came across the fact that you're currently doing a business management degree. What's sort of your goal with this? Is this for something further down the line, or is it just to get that kind of under your belt?
No, that's good research, and actually, yeah. I originally started that because I had this interest in business. Obviously, I never studied when I was younger. I was a terrible student. Now I'm a bit older, a bit wiser. I thought, maybe it's something I want to get into. I have a keen interest in business, and honestly, it's helped me a lot with production. There's a lot of crossover between business management and project management in production side stuff. So the two are helping each other, and all at the same time, I'm going to get a degree. So it's a win-win for everybody, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Is that difficult to manage? Obviously, senior producer, quite a few responsibilities, trying to do a degree alongside that. Is that kind of a difficult balance, or are you getting by all right?
Yeah, it's been difficult at times. I don't think I've had a holiday in 6 years whilst doing this, but yeah, like I just take a couple of days off, do an exam, get back to work, and yeah, like it's been fine so far. It's been great.
We do get a few candidates come through that do sort of take degrees or sort of career changes later in life. Is there any particular advice that you might give for someone like that is sort of like had a career in something else, wanting to transition over into the industry, or considering doing a degree to supplement that?
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, like I guess my advice there is that person or those people would have a very unique view of the world, because they're probably coming in at the levels a regular young graduate would, but they have this unique skill set of where they've developed maturity and skills outside that degree. So my advice would be try and lean on that as much as possible, because that's what's going to give you an advantage over everybody else doing that degree.
I think that's very very valuable advice, because some of the people that I have seen there is kind of like, oh, I'm aware that I'm coming in late. They're almost a bit downbeaten by the fact that it's like that maybe they've built themselves up in a certain industry and they're aware that they're going to have to take a pay cut or relocate and all this kind of stuff to almost start from the bottom. But I think that's good advice. So reflecting on your background a bit then, what would you say has been a career highlight for you?
I don't think I can really pick like a day or a snapshot for a career highlight, but I am incredibly happy with how we developed Warp Digital. Like when I joined, it was kind of we were taking porting gigs, and it was kind of like where's the next one going to come from? Kind of a little bit of tension there. And we've developed the business, we've grown the business into this fully fledged co-development and porting studio, where now we get more business than we can handle. So I'm extremely proud of everybody at Warp Digital and how we built that. So that's probably my career highlight.
And again, we'll plug the podcast. If you are interested to hear about the development of Warp Digital, do listen to the full thing, because you've got quite a few interesting things on the horizon from just how much you've expanded over the last few years. That being said then, that's sort of your career highlight the last couple of years there. Is there a specific project that you've really enjoyed the most, or your favourite project that you've worked on?
There's been a lot of projects. I must admit, I did love working on the F1 projects whilst I was at Codemasters. I'm a big F1 fan, so that was a checkbox very early in my career of doing a bit of a dream project.
No, that's a good one to get under the belt. If you weren't working in your role though, if say you didn't hear the announcement on the radio, where do you think you'd be? What would you think you'd be doing inside or outside of games?
That's actually a great segue, because it'd be probably motorsport. I'd hope it'd be motorsport anyway. Obviously F1 being the pinnacle of that. That's probably my greatest passion, bar gaming. So I'd hope I'd be working in that industry.
Yeah, all sounds really good though. Well, thank you, Piers, for joining me today. It's been really interesting to hear all about your background. Obviously some really valuable advice to people out there. So yeah, thank you, Piers, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I've been your host, Michael Rodber. This has been the Aardvark segment. Thank you very much for listening. Cheers.